Yeah.
Let's do it, brother. Let's
All right.
just let the Lord take it where he wants it to go.
That's a good way to start, I guess.
Yeah.
Lonesome Report, Jim Mundorf from the Middle America, Shad Sullivan from
The
Middle America,
headwaters
USA. Go ahead. Go
the,
ahead. Sorry.
from the headwaters of Bitter Creek, Archer County, North Texas.
All right. And I was telling Chad, I haven't felt tired. I stayed up half the night and then got up early this morning and haven't felt tired until about a minute ago. And it hit me like a brick. But we get together, try to get together once a week and talk about what's going on in the news. And we are pretty much on the biggest news day probably of the last 4 years, I guess. Um, Donald J. Trump is the 47th president of the United States of America. And last time we got together, I said we wouldn't know, but we know. So, uh, what do you think, Shad?
I think we know. I think it was decisive. I thought it was going to be more of a landslide for Trump. I am blown away that she
You
got
didn't
six.
predict that. Well, actually, you did
No,
during the day yesterday. You did
I
say,
did during the day just on social media, but I'm just blown away that there was 66 million people voted that side. But you know, it it was. I think the people spoke. I really do. I think the people spoke and said, you know what, our lives are not as good as they once were. The last 4 years has been hard and contentious, and it's hard to pay the bills. We got to find something new. And I think that rural America showed up like you can't believe. I think that probably the Christians showed up, and that Scott Pressler in
that
he showed up.
fabulous son of a bitch.
I know, right? And he showed up in Pennsylvania. I just think that this whole team that either Trump put together or just came around him by nature just really did a remarkable job. I mean, everybody from the Charlie Kirk deal, all of Joe Rogan, gosh, uh, all of it. I think it is just I just think it was meant to be. I think we needed a change.
Yeah. And the only thing I told Chad like before this deal, I was like, I feel like people, um, like what I hope this show is kind of a little perspective on how people think in Middle America, and just kind of putting our perspectives out there as two people connected to agriculture. And I keep going back to like when I started Lonesome Lands, it was one of the things that like stuck in my head was after the 2016 election, Chuck Todd said maybe we need to put a election office or a news office out in like some county in Wisconsin or something like that because we don't understand these people. And it's like I've been watching CNN and MSNBC like all morning and a lot of last night just to be like, and I don't watch it that often, but it's like, man, do they not get it? Like they are doubling down. It's almost like I wonder if they'll like realize that people just don't believe them, but they don't. Like they just think not enough people heard our message that he's a fascist and he's Hitler and he's all
Right.
these horrible things. And she is this wonderful, transformative person, which nobody ever thought before until she was not nominated, but anointed, really.
Appointed. Yeah,
Yeah.
anointed. That's a
And
good
so
one.
it's like, but I feel like the Middle America has been listening to that. Like there's a guy, Bill Ackman. I wish I could remember what he said, but it was something like, he put a tweet out there and he said like this is what the media needs to realize is that I mean he had a lot better way of saying it, but he said what the media needs to realize is that the American people don't believe you anymore. That's
Yeah.
I mean the people who've been beating this drum of he's this rapist and all of these crazy things
Yeah.
like, and so like I feel like that's really the conclusion I come to as, and really the great thing that the media, and you just said Joe Rogan. I feel like the last three podcasts, I'm not sure if they were, no, they weren't all in a row, but he had Trump on, JD Vance, and Elon Musk, and those probably are the most listened to podcasts ever. I would
Ever.
think.
Yeah.
Um, and watched and every other thing. And it's kind of like, it's really refreshing to think, these are politicians. That JD Vance one, did you see that? Like he sat down and it was like he was in his living room talking to, I mean, he was dropping F-bombs and every other thing, but because that's who he is. And if you know anything about his story, like you're gonna know, like
Yeah,
he grew up with,
pretty rough.
that's how he grew up with drug addicts and some harsh people, but they're also like really faithful. He talked about too. Those kind of things. And if you sit down and watch CNN and MSNBC, you have no idea who he is. But if you sit down and listen to him, two guys just kind of shooting the shit for 2 hours or 3 hours almost, which is really kind of what Trump was too, then you get an idea of who they are. And then you have Elon Musk. If you listen to that one, which I did like into the night. I had to stay up and work the other night and listen to it. And I mean, you think about it, it's two Democrats, Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. They're both, Elon Musk could really the most successful person in the US and one of the most influential. Joe Rogan, the most successful, really media person in the US. And they're sitting down together and they are telling the American people, you have to vote for Donald Trump. And I don't think people like watching the news all night last night. Nobody really gets that how influential that was. I mean, there's people definitely talking about it, but they still don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is I don't know. I'm almost speechless today because I don't know, probably because I'm probably tired, but I just am
Your brain's
overwhelmed at
fried.
yeah, my brain's kind of fried, but I'm just overwhelmed at that at the whole unit or the whole team. And I was super, super stoked about how humble Donald Trump was last night after he spoke to the people and just recognized the whole team and said, we got work to do. We need to unite and get together. And that's kind of an example of how those, you know, Rogan and Musk and all those people have come to the middle, you know, because I don't know, like you said, by nature they lean left, but they needed a change. They needed a transformation. And maybe it was because, the ideologies of the left have gone so far left and the ideologies of the rhino right has gone so far right that we come back to the middle. Maybe it's a natural way. I don't know, Jim, but I do know that this morning that, the Dow is up, everything's up. People's spirits are high. I think they feel a cleanliness, but don't kid yourself, man. The work is ahead of
Yeah,
us. The
that's
work is ahead of us. We have a lot of undoing to do, and they're not going to lay down and just let us go by the way of capitalism and freedom and liberty because that's what they hate. So they're going to fight it too, man.
yeah. And that's one thing. I was just taking a few notes before getting started, and it was like one of the things that I think some Hollywood guy came out and said, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I'm voting for Donald Trump, JD Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy,
Yeah, I
Tulsi
saw.
Gabbard, Elon Musk, RFK Jr. And I wrote those names down, and I'm sure I probably forgot some, but then I was looking at the list and I'm like, okay, Tulsi Gabbard was a Democrat, just switched
Yep.
to Republican. Elon Musk said he's a Democrat. He used to be a Democrat. RFK Jr. was a Democrat like last year. Vivek Ramaswamy, I think he said if I remember right, I don't think he had voted in an election before like 2020 or 2016. I'm not sure, but like he wasn't like this staunch Republican ever until recently too. And so really it's like that's what's crazy. And I think, the old school, the Dick Cheney Republican Party is, the George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney type, Mitch McConnell, all those people. That party is gone and dead
I
for
hope so.
sure. I
I
know.
pray that's right. I mean, I pray that this is a new lease on the Republican Party, and I think it is. And I think that we don't need to call them Republicans. I think there was almost a third party created, and
Yeah,
it's the
that's almost
constitutional conservatives.
yeah.
Uh,
Or just a gigantic shift in this party,
yeah,
hopefully too, because yeah.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
don't agree with a lot. There's a lot of things Joe Rogan says that I don't agree with, and I'm sure I don't agree with, RFK Jr. and Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard, but it's like all those people, they saw the attacks of like First Amendment. That I think was huge in getting those people on when you have
Agree.
John Kerry and her and Tim Walz all saying that we have to, I mean, essentially get rid of the First Amendment and people shouldn't have the right to
Yep.
say what they think. I mean, that's insane. But
Well, I mean, they were not hiding it. Neither was Kamala Harris even hiding it. She says, this speech on social media,
yeah,
we don't. It's irresponsible. And I'm like, I think it was Joe Rogan or somebody who said, speech. Your freedom of speech is not for the speech you like; it's for the speech you don't like.
right.
And I think that's super, super
And it's
important to
just for information. Like there's people, get back to the Hitler, they say he's Hitler, but it's like if Hitler had a freedom of speech in Nazi Germany, Hitler wouldn't have. I mean, they went around like the brown shirts. If you, they
the brown
they pretty
shirt.
much, would beat you up, throw you in prison, all this
Yep.
stuff if you talk bad about them. And that's kind
Yep.
of where she was going with it. It's like we got to destroy Elon Musk. I mean, there was people, you know,
No, there's people
Rachel
calling
Maddow
for
last night
it.
was talking about how we have to get, just destroy his companies as far as SpaceX and Twitter and all this stuff.
I
She's
mean,
crazy.
I mean, I did a little video yesterday morning and the title of it was "Whoever Smelt It, Delta," and that is the total
Oh, I
truth.
missed it. I missed
Oh
the
yeah,
smell.
I
We
mean,
we we preg checked some cows yesterday, and
did
that was
you?
a nice distraction. But I missed out on your smelted Delta.
Well, I mean, it's the truth. Back when you were in junior high, riding the bus, and everybody'd go to wailing about whoever smelt it, dealt it, right? Well, it's exactly what they accuse you of. They are guilty of, and that is the
Yeah, and that's
total.
what's weird watching these. Like if you watch MSNBC or CNN, you go there, which hopefully people don't. I never do, except for this morning. I'm like, what are these people saying who have kind of come unhinged and they went off the deep end and they're still off the deep end. They aren't coming back
I know.
is really but that thing Bill Ackman said, he said if the election outcome is as expected, he did this last night before they announced, but it said it should cause the large minority of the country who supported Kamala Harris and predicted her victory to begin to question their sources of truth.
Woo,
Um,
that is powerful.
right, like just really well said. Like
Yeah.
if you think, it's like this. I mean, to get back into the polls, I was saying I don't want to go backwards, but that Iowa poll, like, holy smokes. Like he won by like 15 or 16, I think, in Iowa.
Yeah.
And they said he was going to lose by 3. Like
Yeah.
that's just, I mean, time to hang it up,
Well,
Des Moines
and we,
Register. If you and that's the thing, if Des Moines Register come out and printed that as if it was credible, and why would you subscribe to a newspaper that continues to just lie? I mean, and to come up with that kind of stuff. It's just you need to question your sources of truth if you believe that.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah. We certainly saw a big shift. I mean, I think Trump lost in New York to Biden by like 70 points. Now, last night it was a 30-point loss. So there is a huge shift
yeah,
in the thing.
that is one thing they talked, they're all scared to death on these news shows, but they said like this wasn't just like the swing states. Like he gained in every
Yeah,
state,
every
and she
state.
gained in 0 counties. Have you seen that
Yeah,
video? I was
yeah.
watching that when they did that, and Jake was like, "What? We've been campaigning for this lady for the last 3 months, and she gained 0 over she gained no percentage points over Biden." But there's the thing too. Have you seen that chart where it shows the amount of total votes over the last like 4 elections?
I have not.
The 2021 is like, I mean, it looks like he got double hers. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it just kind of draws into question like what actually happened last time. But
And
I
I
said
think if
I said this beginning we're gonna onward. We're going forward. So
yeah, we're going forward. And I think if you
um
look at the
and
map,
really what we should be talking about is agriculture and
yeah,
what this really means.
let's
And I
talk about it.
guarantee you there are some people in agriculture that are shitting their pants right now. Don't you think?
And
Um
the irony of it is they all voted for Trump, and or most of them
yeah.
voted for Trump,
Hmm.
and helped us get
That
him in
is fun
here. But
because yeah, I think they, but when you wake up this morning and you like, we all talk about these industrial complexes, and I think agriculture industrial complex has went all in on this climate change deal. That's been a big kind of
they absolutely
part
have.
of my messaging. And I talked about the Rogan interviews. Both Donald Trump and Joe Rogan talked about what a gigantic scam wind energy is. And if you drive across, went to Des Moines this weekend and had to look at all them stupid windmills. And if you drive, I mean, same with your neighborhood and a big chunk of the Midwest. If you believe what, Donald Trump and JD Vance said, that wind energy is one gigantic scam, what is going to happen there? But you also look at the bigger picture. South Dakota, we should talk about them because I had Amanda Radke on. We spent a lot of time talking about that pipeline. And this issue of if the county should be able to, if your own county should be able to kind of set their own rules when it comes to that kind of stuff. And the people of South Dakota came out big for the rights of their own county and the freedoms of their own county. And so that was awesome to see because that's going to be a big thorn in the side of this carbon pipeline. But also, like if they think wind energy is a big scam, I mean, and Vivek is a big part of this campaign, and I watched him crisscross Iowa talking about what a gigantic hoax. I mean, he uses the word hoax. Climate change, this climate change agenda it is a hoax, is what he would say. And so, and I think he's definitely in the cabinet watching him, seeing how they've kind of embraced him and he's been on the campaign. So,
Yeah, I would say so. And I don't know. There's going to be a little contention in the whole cabinet because,
but that's
like
good, I think.
I
It's
do
the whole
too.
team of rivals kind of thing. Like Abraham, the team of rivals was Abraham Lincoln. That comes from Abraham Lincoln's cabinet, which he brought in a bunch of people that didn't necessarily agree, but he thought they were good for the spot. So, but that's the other
I
thing too. Like if you look at his Trump's last presidency and the people who he brought in and had around him, it's a big difference. Um,
way big difference.
yeah, and I
Oh,
think like I said, there's a lot of people in agriculture they're probably scared to death, but I think there's probably a lot of Republicans that are kind of a little worried too. Like I said, that old party of like Deb Fisher, she squeaked out a win.
she squeaked out
I mean,
one.
and that should be a message. I don't know if it will be,
Well,
but
I mean,
it's like if
Tester.
you're
Think
going to
about
side with corporations constantly and be on the side of big ag, it's not the winning side anymore. Like
it
there's,
is not. It is
and I
not.
think the people's eyes have been opened about all this climate stuff and how it needs to be stopped. But I mean, I don't think that gets into the Deb Fisher. I didn't really pay that much attention to the Deb Fisher race. I did not think it would be that close, but it was a squeaker.
Yeah, and Tester got out. I mean, he got beat pretty handily
Yeah, he
in
got.
Montana.
I don't. I think there's still votes out, but he's down like 10 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah, they called it.
Yeah, friend of the
Uh,
cattleman, John Tester. Adios.
yeah, I mean, I honestly, Jim, I'm excited to see what happens to the global cabal or the corporate global scheme, and to see what Trump and all of those people do with that, because you know this pay to play system is it a possibility that it's in danger, and who are we going to put in as the Secretary of Agriculture? I mean,
yeah.
I know some people that are on the list,
Who's
and
that? Who? Like, let's make a prediction. Who do you? Excuse me.
I don't want to make a prediction. I want to tell you who I want, who I think is who I think that we should have on as Secretary of Ag.
Well, you made a prediction in the
But I
Ted
mean,
Cruz race. Should
there's
we talk about that?
yeah, that was the wrong. I predicted that wrong,
I think a
and the
lot of
reason
people
I
did. A lot
did,
of
the
people
reason I
think if you listen to Ted Cruz, it
well, I
sounded
mean,
like he thought he might lose.
he was nervous, and
Yeah.
here's the deal: the reason why is because who was the guy that ran against him last time? The fake Mexican guy
Beto.
that said he was going to, yeah, Beto, and Cruz barely beat Beto, barely.
I
So I
know.
was surprised at how well he beat this guy last night.
Hmm.
And that's really the reason why I predicted a loss for
I think a
Cruz.
lot of
But
people were surprised because everybody
you
thought
know,
loved that guy. Like they're like, he's a good guy.
oh, and he's dynamic, no doubt
Yeah.
about it. But rural Texas showed up, and conservative Texas showed up for sure. Because even in the maps this morning, really the Democrat strongholds were very concentrated into the big cities, and just right outside of those cities, they was all conservative. So people did show up. Man, what a blessing that is. So
Okay, Secretary of Agriculture.
yeah, what about the
Um,
Secretary of
well,
Agriculture?
get
What you
back to
got on?
Texas. I'll say one of my, if I was, I'm not, I don't, it's hard to predict, but I think one of the guys on the short list is probably Sid Miller.
That's 100%. He is on the short list.
Who he is, if you don't know, the secretary or the, what is it?
Commissioner of Ag in Texas.
Commissioner of Ag.
Yeah,
Yeah, in
yeah.
Texas. And he has come out, like if you, I follow him on Twitter, and he sounds like RFK Jr. A lot of this kind of stuff. He's all about health. Like he's come out with some surprising and when you look at that, it's kind of like, well, are you trying to get on the good side of I don't know, how connected are you to have you met Sid Miller?
Oh yeah, a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Well, you better get in touch.
For what?
Well, so you can be a consultant
Oh,
when he's
I
the
don't think
Secretary of Ag.
I'm not high up enough to be any kind of consultant to anybody. I don't think, but I could
Well,
give him
you
some.
won't with that attitude, I'll tell you that much.
I could give him some of my advice,
Yeah, well,
and
that's what a consultant does.
be happy to, but I don't think they'll come seeking it for sure.
What do you think of Sid Miller then? Do you think he would be a good Secretary of Agriculture?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that tells us a lot. That answer tells us a lot. I do think he would be good, but I haven't met him. You know him a little better than I do.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's other people on the list. I think the biggest thing Sid has going against him is his age, and maybe his health isn't that
How old
great.
is he?
77, 78, somewhere in there, maybe
Same age as Trump.
mid 70s, I think. Um, I think he has had a heart attack once or something. Had a few health issues, but yeah, he's on the short list. I heard Carson Jorgensen was on there.
What? Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Where'd you hear that? From him?
yeah. Um,
But
I
he's
what
talked to the campaign?
I can't answer that. I don't
Oh,
know.
right.
I do know he's on the list, and I figure Harriet Hageman's on the list, isn't
I
she?
would I would hope so.
What about
I mean,
Thomas Massie?
I feel like we're going through our wish list right now. But maybe
Well,
we should
maybe we
come
are.
back.
I don't know who. I mean, I wish I knew. I wish I knew. I wish we could see the list. I so want bad.
That's
So when
where
it
I'm,
gets,
and that's what I was going to say. Like, this is where the fight begins because
yes,
right now, you know, NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association,
yep,
is having meetings right now. How do we get in
yep,
there? How do we
yep.
influence this campaign? How do we make sure we get, you know, and that's the other thing. They've been all in on this ESG, which I've, this is
They
a,
pushed it. Are you
oh, it's
kidding
on
me?
their website right now. And this
Yeah.
is a colossal like pushback and
Oh,
rejection of all of that stuff. Like this campaign was not run on any of that. It was ran against it. Like
that's
I
why.
said, what Ramaswamy would say and what JD Vance said on Rogan about wind energy and all this different stuff. Um, and even Elon Musk, who's the number one guy when it comes to electric vehicles, he pushed back on all of this stuff. Um, because I think
Well,
he
that's
also lives in reality when it comes to this electric vehicles. Like you're not going to mandate like California did electric cars by 2030 or whatever.
well, that's
Um,
ironic too, because he's they mandate all this stuff, but now they hate him. But he's the one that created the electric cars.
yeah, they
And
used to
that's
love him
what the
too.
whole irony of what happened last night is rural America put him in, and yet we're going to have these no doubt members of the NCBA and all these trade organizations are conservative by nature,
Yeah.
and they voted for
And they,
him.
yeah, I think they
But they
voted.
don't. The
We're on the
irony
same
is
side
that,
as far, I mean,
yeah. Well, the irony is that he's coming after that global corporatism.
yeah.
They're going to end. They're going
And
to
they've
end that.
been teamed up for years and years. So how does that work? But yeah, the other thing is where the fight begins is they're down the street and they're going around knocking on doors right now and saying, "We are the voice of the American cattleman." You know what I mean? And so that's where the fight begins. We have to get the Jack Paynes and the Shad Sullivans and the Brett Kensies and the people who boots on the ground raising cattle.
Skin
Because
in the
what
game, buddy.
NCBA does is they fly a bunch of people out there a couple times a year who are love, to sit on the rooftop patio and enjoy a free drink and a free meal and hobnob with these politicians. And then they take them around to the different politicians' office and say, this is a rancher from Montana or wherever, and he supports our organization and we are his voice. And and I think we're living in a different world now where a couple of dingbats with cowboy hats on can sit down and have a couple thousand people watch them once a week, and you don't have that luxury of NCBA doesn't have that luxury of being like we're the cattleman's voice when you got
Yeah.
Jack Payne who's a straight up
Yes.
bulldog doing every single thing he can possible to get his
Yes.
voice heard. His voice is going to get heard. He's my number one podcast. I'm hoping to have him on the podcast. I'm hoping he's my next one, but um anyway,
No.
that's
Yes. I totally agree. I
and
mean,
I think Farm Bureau too. Farm Bureau is so in on the sustainability, in this
they
climate
all
smart
are.
commodity thing. They have pushed this climate deal onto agriculture so hard, and now you've got people who definitely are questioning the climate agenda coming into the
Yes.
White House. What do they do? Are they going to do a 180, or I mean, they
I
have
mean,
to still.
it is totally an example of the pay to play system and how it's coming from the top down into these trade organizations. And it's not just the trade organizations. I mean, it is the environmental organizations. It is the colleges and universities. There's a sweet little girl from my hometown that is going to school at a big college and university. Yesterday, I watched her on social media talking about on a talk. I'm not going to say what it was, but it was her whole title was sustainability in agriculture. See, we have brainwashed these kids, so I'm anxious to see how that is going to play out. Because, like I said, the irony is they voted him in, and yet he's going to come after him, and I hope he does. I hope he does. That is my dream. Is that I got a good friend named Mike Calicrate, and Mike and I do not see the same politically. But Mike told me a long time ago, he said, Shad, they will never break him up. And when he says break him up, he's talking about the Packers and the global corporate uh, antitrust breakers. He says they'll never break him up under a Republican controlled White House. And I thought, you know what? I don't know that that's true. We've gone along here, and the Democrats have never broke them up. They have never broke them up, even though they talk
Yeah, Vilsack
antitrust.
spent 12 of the last 16 years telling
Yep,
us he
yep,
is against these concentrated corporations in agriculture. And
yep.
every single merger, he just puts a stamp right on it.
That stamps
And
it right there.
he just,
That
which at the end, after 12 years of being told that, he's a liar. He's just
he's a
lied.
liar.
He's lied
Yep,
from the get-go. And so,
yep.
I
I
mean,
think that there. I think this is the chance. I think that Trump and RFK and JD Vance. I think this is the time when we will break them up. And I pray to God it is the conservatives that do it. I pray it is.
I don't care if it's the conservatives or that's the other thing about, Mike Calcrate. I don't know how old he is, but he's seen a lot more elections than I have. But like when you get to this age where I'm 45 and I'm like my first election, I think was George W. his first one. But the thing is, you look back on these elections and like the whole thing is everybody says, well, this is the most important one. This is the most important one. But this one, like if you look back at Mitt Romney, Barack Obama, or George W. Bush and Al Gore and those kind of things, after all these years, you look back on those, I don't know that either any of them would have been really that different. It was like one party running against
It
each
is
other,
the
and one of them
uniparty.
would, yeah.
Yeah,
like, but this one would have been is going to be way different. You know what I mean? Like
I agree with you. And
Kamala, if you look at these teams and these people behind these people, it would
yeah,
have been the biggest shift of,
yeah.
and they make it out to be like that. They always have made it out to be like that. Like Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. Mitt Romney put in socialized medicine in Massachusetts. And then Obama gets in there and he puts social, it may have been a little bit different or he may have not had that same kind of plan, but healthcare would have still be screwed up. Maybe it's not as screwed up as it is, but yeah, I don't think
Listen,
like Al Gore, like he would have done some environmental things or whatever, but he probably would have handled 9/11. Who knows? Because it seems like these people just want to go to war no matter what. So it's like,
well, they're taking us to the same place just by a
yeah.
different method. The
And I think
Republicans,
there's a lot of people our age that are thinking that too. Like,
yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
these people that are entrenched in Washington, D.C., it doesn't matter what party they're in.
That's
Did
right.
Mitch McConnell, he's been worse for the Republican Party. And I would even say some of my senators have been terrible because they go through these elections. We're going to cut spending. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they go up there and they just, you know, do the exact
Well,
same thing they've always done and pass every spending bill just as long as their state gets a big pile of money. They don't care. So,
listen, in the last 3 weeks, we have seen the proof of all what we're talking about through one relationship, and that is Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney. Kamala Harris spent the last 30 years hating Liz Cheney, and now all of a sudden they're best friends. Why? Because they are a uniparty. They have the
yeah.
same ideals down the road. I mean, Kamala Harris's ideology is right up front in your face. She's a Marxist, and they want us to be serfs. The Republicans, Liz Cheney, they still want us to be serfs. They just want to take us through a prettier landscape
And
getting
that's
there.
the one thing that the other thing nobody's saying is that Dick Cheney thing. That had to hurt. When Dick Cheney comes out and endorses you and you're somebody my age, who, if you're a Democrat, Dick Cheney was the absolute devil, worst human on earth, 20 years ago for these Democrats. And that's what they all talked about. And now he's behind your candidate. And then
Exactly.
you see all these Democrats like Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, RFK, and they come out and they support Trump. I mean, there's the reason for that. And you have
Well,
to
even
look at that.
George W. Bush came out. Didn't he come out and say he
I
was
don't know
voting?
that he ever came out. No, I don't think he ever said it. Like,
Hmm.
I'm sure he probably didn't vote for Trump, but
Well, we know Pence
um,
didn't vote for Trump.
what's that?
We know Pence didn't vote for Trump.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm sure, but they didn't endorse
No,
Kamala.
Pence came out and said, I am endorsing Kamala Harris.
Yeah, see, that shows what I know. I guess I don't follow it as close.
Oh, well,
But
I don't.
so, anybody else you want to talk about for Secretary of Ag? Thomas Massie, you said you think he would
I
be good, or because
I
he is a
think that
cattle producer, but he is a grass-fed
I think
organic cattle producer.
well, but I think that his foundation is in liberty and freedom and the
Yeah,
Constitution, and I like that. I think he would have a huge learning curve where I don't think Hageman would. I think
yeah,
that Sid
that's
Miller's going to have to get in there and dig harder to learn. I think that's going to be a huge adjustment for Sid Miller, but I honestly think Sid is planning on being the guy. That's what I think.
yeah, and coming from Texas. Although, how much like I've never really seen him come out and like he was all in against these EIDs,
No, I mean he has come out on the side that we are on. Like
which
he
is
has come
crazy to
out.
me because like if you talk about Secretary of Ag and who you want, the who you want is the one who's going to look these corporate lobbyists. The NCBA are going to come knock on the door and they're going to tell them to go to hell, which is Thomas Massie and Harry Hageman. You know they
Well,
will.
Sid too. I mean Sid too.
And yeah,
Sid has
so
come.
apparently that's what I was asking. Like,
He is.
because the
Sid
biggest
has come
cattle
out.
industry lobbyists,
Yep,
Texas cattle
he
feeders,
has.
Southwest Texas, or yeah, cattle
And I
raisers.
think what catapulted him into really coming out this year and denouncing these trade organizations in his own state, which are very, very powerful, is the property rights issue, the land theft issue, and the land
Yeah,
grabs,
he
and
did
that.
come out, like now that you're saying this, he
Oh
came out
yeah,
against
oh
Farm
yeah,
Bureau. He was tweeting, he was like ripping
oh
Farm Bureau,
yeah. No,
Texas Farm Bureau.
he called out publicly. He called Texas Farm Bureau, the cattle raisers, and the Texas Cattle Feeders Association, along with the corn growers. And he said, "Where are you people when it comes to the defense of private property rights?" I mean, I was there at the Muleshoe land grab meeting, and none of those people were there except Farm Bureau, and their two representatives left madder than hell. They left three-quarters of the way through the meeting. I watched them. I knew who they were as soon as I walked in. You can spot. I didn't know them personally, but you can spot them a mile away. And I told Margaret Byfield, I said, "There's your two Farm Bureau guys." Well, sure enough, and then you could see him just start fuming, and Sid called him out, and then they left.
He called him out in
And
the meeting.
in the meeting, he didn't call them out personally, but the Texas Farm Bureau he called out in that
Yeah,
meeting and
right.
said, "Where are you people? Where are you people defending these grassroots producers and landowners?" And I'll just tell you this: what helped that was the Eastern New Mexico Ranchers and the Eastern New Mexico Commissioners Association. Man, they're as big a part of that, and they are in a democratic controlled and run state, and they're getting their heinies pounded, handed to them, and that helped give Sid Miller confidence, because there was so many. There was 700 people at that one meeting, and I was proud of Sid Miller that night. I really was.
Well, that's good.
Yep.
Don't be so apprehensive then.
I'm not apprehensive. I
You
I
did say yes, but you seemed somewhat apprehensive.
I said yes. I said yes.
Yeah. But yeah, and the only thing with me, he's been in politics for quite a while, right?
Long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Long
that's
time.
why I'm thinking like the best ag secretary is someone who hasn't been in politics for that long and doesn't really know how the machine works and isn't real. But I mean, if he's been in there and he's already pushing back, then that's a good
Well,
sign.
I think that Sid loves himself enough that he doesn't care what anybody thinks about
Yeah, and
him,
that's the other thing about being old.
and
Like
I
you
like
just
that.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, all right. I think, oh, Elon Musk's interview. Did you see the part where he said beef has is irrelevant when it comes to climate change?
I did
It's
see that
so
part.
irrelevant that it cannot be measured. And the first thing that came into my head is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association wants to measure greenhouse
Monitor,
gases
report,
so they
better.
can become net zero, or I don't think they used the term net zero, but they used climate. I can't remember, but it's net zero. Like they want to show that they're climate neutral, and maybe that's what they called it, by the year 2040. And here you have this incredibly influential, really environmentalist kind of guy
Yeah.
talking about how beef, and that is the messaging that the cattle industry should have had from the very get-go. That, which I know they say, beef is, they're not saying that beef is bad for the environment, but when you buy into this narrative
Yes.
that you're going to be net zero by a certain date, you're buying into the narrative that you are bad for the environment, and you're not, and that's
But
what the messaging should have been.
it
The
should have been.
cattle
But
are irrelevant.
what we saw because of that was the fact that pay to play is number one. I was on
Yep.
a podcast this week, and this gentleman,
Which
young
one?
gentleman,
People want might want to hear it.
the Wealthy Cowboy Show, and
Oh, is that what's his name? What's that guy's
Crockett
name? Yep.
Carruthers.
And
Yeah,
that's big. He's good at it. And so,
yeah,
I
he's
see other guys.
super humble kid, and just young, wants to get into
Yeah, he
the
does a
industry.
great job.
He does, and he's like, Shad, why is this why do we not have the support of our trade organizations? Why are they not fighting for us? Why are not we not advertising and educating about beef? And I told him because of one thing, and they're probably going to, send me some sort of letter. But I said, because the policymakers in these trade organizations are worried about their jobs. If you look at NCBA and you look at how many of those people make $100,000 plus a year on the backs of the American cattle producer, the backs of the American taxpayer, you'll figure out that it's all about who is paying them the most money to push an agenda. And it's just stupid. And I mean stupid. When I say that, I mean from the bottom of my heart, it is stupid that these trade organizations have bought into what you said, bought into the lie that all of this is about, climate change or carbon footprint, methane, net zero. it's not. It's none of it's about that. It's all about the land. I'll continue to say it. It's all about the land. And they're going to go to whoever and support whatever ideology that pays them and keeps them their jobs. Because we're not talking $40,000 a year job. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. These policymakers and these trade organizations have never had skin in the game. I told him about the interesting conflict between the RFID, EID, and all of those minions who have stakes, are stakeholders and shareholders in these tag companies or on some sort of committee, all of that. And it's all come down from the top. And I hope that's what we defeat in this election because of this election. I want the American people, the rancher and farmer, the independent producers to focus on independence again and become who they were meant to be and not a bunch of followers. These trade organizations, if the trade organizations were doing us any good, Jim, we would be more prosperous and more secure in our production than we have ever been in history because we have technology on our side. We have new principles in management practice on our side. We're supposed to be practicing capitalism. We're not. All of this has come to a ruination at this point of the American producer. And if you can't see that and realize it, that your trade organizations have done nothing for you, then you never will.
Yeah. It needs to be like clean house. Like when you have, Texas cattle feeders or Southwest Cattle Raisers Association trying to get somebody fired because he came out and explained a policy, like that's the Corbett Wall deal. Like, and that is not their members. That is all their
Oh,
paid staff. But you have to ask
yeah.
yourself why. Why would they want to do that? It's because they've gotten orders to do that. They feel like their livelihood depends on it. That's why they want him fired because they have to have this EID thing because if they can't push that through, then what good are they?
And how much
And
sense
and
does
it's
it make
time for the members to tell
yes,
to look yourself in the mirror and be like, if these people aren't doing what good am I? Why am I paying dues? Why am
get
I
out.
going to this convention? Why am I doing all this crap when they don't even listen to you?
No, I totally agree. These policymakers could not change a flat tire. I've said that over and over and over. They could not do the simplest of things. But you know what they do? They talk well and they rub each other's, pat each other on the back, and they take their money and go down the road, and then they have to protect that paycheck. They have no values, is what I feel like that's what it is. And then you have a certain sector of producers that are so loyal to them, and I call them organization loyalists, that are so loyal to them and traditionally connected to them through family values, I guess, that they can't see the forest for the trees. And it's a problem, but I truly believe that coming back to the middle last night, the independence is going to reign again. And I hope I mean, why, Jim? Tell me what the reason is to have the most radical environmental organization sit at the table with you, who is against the product you are supposedly promoting. And that doesn't just go in the cattle industry. The cotton producers have let them infiltrate them. The corn producers have let them infiltrate it. It's all of it. It's all of it. And they've done a damn good job. They've been very patient and they've done a dang good job of infiltrating these trade organizations to control policy making. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get so angry.
Yeah, I
Uh,
know.
I
That's what I was
just,
thinking, but it was like, that's good. It's good to show some emotion.
I
You're
just,
passionate. You're not.
I'm very
That's why I
passionate
tell
about
people
it.
when they get mad at each other in these groups, well, it's good to be passionate.
Well, it's the future of these it's the future and the legacy of the kids who need to come behind us that's at stake. That's what it is. We talked about trade or entry barriers last week, and that's what it is. We were just talking about Crockett Carruthers, and what an inspiring young man that is, who thought on his own, has his own way of thinking, but he wants to get into ranching full time. That's what he wants to be when he gets older. And we talked about having to put aside your dream to create wealth so you can get into ranching later. And I said the problem with that is by the time you delay your dream, And when you delay your dream, you become older and your dream is harder. So why don't we create entry, an access to entry through through what the way it's supposed to be, through
Right.
supply and demand and capitalism, and we have help to do that. Why don't we do that? But no, our trade organizations are totally against that. And you know who said it? Our last Secretary of Agriculture, get big or get out. He said it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, he's just saying what all of the Secretary of Agricultures have probably
that's right.
thought or, how they've really acted.
Yeah.
But the other thing with agriculture, it's going to be tricky because they're like, I'm in the middle of grain country and, there's a lot of subsidies that are holding things up. And it's like, how do when you get into cattle, it's like, well, I was driving around yesterday, um, and you see all this CRP land that should be grazed, right? It's stupid that conservation land you can't even run cattle on it because it gets worse. Like cattle, grass needs to be mowed for it to really thrive. Um, and that's why when you mow your yard, your grass does better. And if you let it go, it turns into a weed patch. It's the same way with CRP. And the way to mow that is to put cows on it. But we're at this point where they're paying these people $200 an acre
Yep.
plus on the CRP land, which has propped up all the other land, all the other
Yep.
land prices. And
Yep.
then so I mean, there's just this crazy balancing act also because it's like, well, you're paying for grass for your cows. And what happens if we open up grazing on CRP and then we can all put a bunch of cows on it and then the price of cows goes crazy, but then we have way more cattle in the, we have way more calves in the fall. It's just this kind of,
It's a
there's so
circle.
much. And then that affects grain prices if we have more, and it's just all,
But isn't that the way it's supposed to be? I mean,
it
isn't that
is.
capitalism?
It is,
And
but the problem is that it hasn't been that way for years and years and years.
no, we've come to depend on the
Right.
subsidies to uphold our operations. And how wrong is that? I mean,
And it's
we are
not
now,
even if you didn't cash a single government check, it's the whole system. It's like the ethanol. Like, okay, ethanol, it brings up corn prices and then the cattle feeders are getting DDGs and there's this whole system that is created by this government being so involved, and you can't just be like an RFK or whoever and come in and be like, okay, we're gonna get out or we're not gonna do this anymore. I mean, even the
well,
wind
I
thing.
totally think there's going to be growing pains. And Trump alluded to that last night in his speech. I
Yeah,
mean, to get
but the
the
thing is,
right thing,
you can't let it become like growing amputations. You know what I mean? Like
well, I
growing
mean,
pains could turn.
well,
You
that's why
can't let them
we've
be
picked.
mortal wounds, right? Like,
Well, that's why we've picked these leaders. That I mean,
yeah,
that is our responsibility to oversee and approve of what they're doing. But we have a problem here, Jim. Nobody wants to talk about it. We're a net importer of food since
right.
2023 for the first time in our history, and we
Yeah.
have a government system that is paying us to reduce production on American land so we can be more dependent on foreign adversaries for our products.
But here's
For
the
our
thing.
food products especially.
Well, we should stop being so angry, Shad, because right now that is being talked about more than it ever has before. And
That's
you're
true.
right there because that is maybe the key. Like if we're gonna run way more cows, well, let's just quit importing so much beef. You know what I mean? But I know that well, it's the lean trim and you get into all that crap.
Oh, I
But
know. It's a balancing act, Jim. It truly is. But listen, I think we take a step forward if we just get rid of the nefarious ideologies.
yeah.
We totally take a step forward.
And we're taking steps forward, it seems like. Like
Yeah.
if you look at last January, I went to South Dakota stock growers and made that video of
Right.
lie agreed upon about this climate deal.
Which was awesome.
I mean,
That was
and
so good.
it's probably around a year ago that I found and started researching this climate smart commodity thing and how entrenched, $3 billion just shoved into these corporations this whole climate agenda. And here we have, the president and vice president and their whole team kind of behind them rejecting that entire idea.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like, and it all comes from getting that information. Like more and more people are getting that information. And I think it was JD Vance on Rogan said that he talked about how we are an importer. It was one of them. I can't remember. I heard it recently. We're a net importer. We import more food than we ever have before. And I mean, it's really, these are all good things. So, I mean, we're
They
going in
are
the
good.
right direction.
They are good things. And I'll tell you, it takes all of us, you and me and Mindy Patterson and all of these people that have come and were awoken by this many years ago that have just kind of come into a circle. I think we've been very
Andrea
effective.
Hutchinson.
Andrea
I'm gonna have
Hutchinson,
her. I've got her podcast recorded, but she is like a pioneer in
she
this
is
kind of
the
stuff.
she
And
is the pioneer.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk to her and everything because like her eyes were open to all this years and years and years ago,
Oh, years ago, 20 years ago.
and
And
people have laughed at her, and
well,
she has
but
become like
here's how you know that we've been effective in agriculture is that when the United Nations and the coming to be vice president starts using your talking points, those are good things, and that it's freedom making, right? I always talk about freedom making, freedom taking. Well, so a couple of days ago, I was on TikTok, and there was a girl on TikTok promoting Farm Journal and the money that you're talking about that they got through the Climate Smart Commodities program, um, pushing out the availability of that money to people who are interested in coming on board with Farm Journal. And I said, well, how much money did Farm Journal get? And they blocked me. They totally blocked me. So
but that's the
I think,
thing. That's the whole. I think I'll feel like that's the whole, like everything we've been talking about. People are getting information from different sources and they're finding out they're able to do their own research. They're able to, everything I say, you can go, you feel, and I'm doing it more all the time too. Just go to Google and start looking up things. Look at the Climate Smart Commodity Program and look at where all the money's going. It's
yeah.
not hard to figure out. And there's more and more people who've been awoken. And it's the same with politics. Like these people on MSNBC can't understand why anyone would elect a fascist Nazi. Well, maybe they don't believe you when you tell them, the guy was president for 4 years,
I
he
know
didn't exactly,
he should have put us in the camps 4 years ago. Dang it!
yeah, I know.
Now
Like,
we're awake to his.
why don't these people believe that the president who was president for 4 years is actually Adolf Hitler? They can't wrap their heads around that.
Well, I
And it's
think
like, they don't believe you. I just want to say, no one believes you anymore.
nobody,
I mean,
nobody.
there's a few, but
Well, I mean,
less
here's
and
the deal.
less.
More and more, we're getting our news in real time off of
Yeah.
social media. You know,
Yeah, and that's the thing, like with this election, like what Elon Musk said. I mean, Twitter was, who knows if Trump would have won if Elon Musk didn't have Twitter and allowed all this information out there the way he does.
and what
It's
was the catalyst that changed him? I would love to know. And was it over time? Was it what was it exactly that he
I
says
think it
we need
was
to change?
watch well, if you watch the Rogan thing, he talks about it on there because he said he was the number one most interacted. He wasn't the most followed, but I think he was the most interacted with person on Twitter. And he
Okay,
could see things as, because he was so interacted with, he could look at and he's a super smart guy and probably
super.
math just comes to him. So when he looks at his algorithm type, he looks at what's going on certain things that are not being shown and certain things that are being shown. And then, I think the Hunter Biden laptop story, I'll bet you that was a big
Maybe, yeah.
change. When you got 50, you have all the social media companies and 50 intelligence officers coming out and saying this is fake and it's put out by Russia and the whole thing was a lie. Like every one of them was just a liar. And then it came out that the government forced those social media companies to take that story down. Like, I think that had a huge that had a huge impact the wrong way. Like they wanted to control that election, but what they did is they they really turned a lot of people, made a lot of people more and more skeptical.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think is going to happen in a situation like that when Trump, is inaugurated? And there are many, many politicians who have broke the law. Hunter Biden, all of these things that they know. I mean, we all hear about it all the time. All this corruption. Does Trump go after those people who literally were accusing him of being a Hitler, and yet they were trying to imprison their political opponent, Donald Trump?
I hope
Does he
not.
go after those people, or
I
does
know
he
there's
call
a lot of people that hope he does, but I hope he doesn't. And I think
does he call a truce?
he's mentioned possibly pardoning Hunter Biden, like just being like, we're not going to prosecute him, and you're pardoned for, go away.
Well,
I
then
think
he's
pretty
got to
much.
pardon all the J6 people.
Well, I think that's on top of the list. I don't think there's a doubt he's going to do that because that whole thing, I think that should definitely be investigated, and we should know how many, what the actual involvement of, because the FBI they don't say that there was people, they had people in the crowd, but they won't say that they didn't.
So now we have to know what the true meaning or the definition of treason is, because there are
Yeah,
people in our government that have performed treasonous
right.
acts, and
But that has to be proven with
it has
beyond
to
a
be
shadow of a
proven. But
doubt. We can't do what they did with January 6th and be
that's
like,
my
you were
question.
involved, you're in jail.
Does he go
Um,
after him? Will he go after him? Because if they
I think
don't,
he'd
in
be
my
better off if he
opinion,
didn't.
I don't know.
And
Now
I guess it just depends. I mean,
they're
Phil,
working against him in the behind the scenes. If they don't go after him,
yeah, I
they're working
agree.
against him behind the scenes.
Yeah. That Jesse Kelly, somebody put out like, somebody said, I hope we can all get along or something. And he put, nope, we are enemies now. Like that was his response, which I
But
don't like. I don't like that. I mean, it's like we talked about Mike Calcrate, like he's Democrat, he's our friend.
I love Mike.
Um, and but yeah, when
Mike,
it gets into the people at Washington D.C., and that's what I want to feel like I just want to tell them all it's going to be all right because it's tough to go through and be passionate about an election and really want your guy to win or gal in this case, and then they don't. It really. I mean, we've all been there if you're my age, no matter who you're for.
I
But
remember back.
it will be. What's that?
Well, I just remember back in 1992, and I was a freshman in college up in Wyoming, and man, the presidential election was on, right? And I mean, it was on like Donkey Kong with Bill Clinton. And the conservatives, the Republicans, they were all so worried that Bill Clinton was going to get in to office. And I remember one gal saying, "This is going to be the biggest tragedy in American history if Bill Clinton gets into office." And of course, he got into office, and it certainly was not the biggest tragedy in American history. Um, but who thought, looking back at Bill Clinton, that was so mild
Right.
compared to
And
the corruption that we have now.
yeah. And you compare to who was he running against? Bob Dole? Was that it? I can't remember who he
Well, I
first
can't
ran.
remember it. Was it Bob Dole?
Hmm. I
I
was
don't.
I was 13 years old or something.
That was my first presidential election, was the
Yeah.
Clinton
If that
election.
was Bob Dole, that's pretty good for
I
me.
think I think
I
it was
remember.
Bob Dole.
Um, EID mandate is enacted now, right? November 5th.
As of
First of
yesterday.
all, I don't think it's been talked enough about the date that they made this happen on election day. That was by design, I feel like. Like, what's the one day in the whole year that people aren't going to be paying attention to any single thing? And even the 2 weeks leading up to, or month leading up to, or however much time leading up to. So it really kind of hamstrung you and it hamstrung all the politicians that we've all been I've been calling, and you think any of my reps or senators even give two shits about EID tags when they got this election coming? Like everyone's focus has been 100% on the election, but now we have an EID mandate,
Yeah,
which if you're not familiar, electronic identification ear tags are now mandated on a certain segment of cattle that are getting transported around. But we all know that this is the toe in the door, and the goal is to get them on everything.
that's right.
So kind of where do we go from here?
Well,
You're involved, so we have a lawsuit. How does this all work?
from what I understand about the lawsuit is that the mandate it has been implemented. The lawsuit has been filed, and so it bypasses an injunction of stopping this. But RCAF has asked, and NCLA has asked that people call USDA and say, "Hey, we need an extension,"
Right.
and so
And
that would work.
Corbett said that on Feeder Flash yesterday, but it's kind of like I said, he's like, you got to call today. It's like it's election day. Nobody is,
No, no, they
USDA.
took USDA took thousands of calls on it yesterday, from what I understand. And I can't remember who was telling me this last night. Oh, I know. I got an email last night from a gal in Virginia, and she wrote this great letter, and she called him, and she thought there ain't no way anybody's going to answer the phone. They answered it on the first ring. It was a woman at the USDA. This woman who contacted them said, "I'd like to make a complaint." And the woman at the USDA says, "Is it about the EID?" She said, "Yes." She said, "I'll be glad to take your complaint and let the hierarchy know. But I am hearing you loud and clear, and I understand you. And there have been hundreds of calls ahead of you today, starting early in the morning. So maybe that will have a bearing on it." But to get back to the
So I'll put
lawsuit,
that phone number. We'll look that up and put that in the description.
I think it's yeah, look it up and put it in the description. It's 202
Yeah.
704 3631, I
When
think.
if we're not sure about the phone number, let's not give
Well, I'm
out
not
some
sure.
poor
Okay,
poor
so
person's phone number.
put it in the deal. Put it in the deal. But anyway, to get back to the lawsuit, the way I understand the lawsuit is it would actually force a reversal of the mandate rule if the lawsuit was won, and then it could never be revisited again. That's kind of the way I understood the people who are above me. Now, that may not be totally right, but at least there is action on it. And I'm telling you, the common rancher who knows about it is against it. But then you start talking to some of those NCBA loyalists, and they're against it personally, but they don't want to talk about it, especially the ones that are very involved on social media. They just do not want to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's what's really disappointing. Like Iowa
Yeah.
Cattlemen's had a whole meeting about how you can bend over and grab your ankles and go along with this deal. And it was right around the same time where South Dakota stock growers and Iowa stock growers and Independent Beef Association North Dakota, they were all having their freedom rally, and
Do
so
you, well, let me ask you this. So the, I don't know if he's the president now. I think he is the president of South Dakota Cattlemen's. Um, what is his name?
stars with a W or something.
Wilkinson, Todd Wilkinson,
Oh, is he the president?
isn't
No,
it? Yeah.
he was president of NCBA. He was the last
He-
president of NCBA.
okay, yeah, but he's from South Dakota. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
He's from South Dakota. I'm sorry, but he's the one that come out so heavy in favor of it, and I'm like, number one, is he on the ranch 100% of the time?
He's
Number
a
two,
lawyer. He has an
yeah,
attorney's office in town.
exactly. So where does he stand to benefit from promoting the EID?
A lot of the NCBA president before him is Jerry Bone. He is the secretary. He's on the board of directors for U.S. Premium Beef. I don't know if this Wilkinson's involved with U.S. Premium Beef, but U.S. Premium Beef is a partner the biggest, the biggest minority. They were the majority owner of National Beef Packing.
National beef. Yeah. I
And
learned that from you actually.
the president, the chairman of the board of U.S. Cattle Trace, which is who NCBA wants to control all of the third party information on all of the EID tags, is also the chairman of the board for U.S. Premium Beef. His name's Mark Gardner, and U.S. Premium Beef owns 15% of National Beef Packing Corporation. Their members are all big cattle feeders, and so they are doing what the Beef Packing Corporation wants them to do because they're
Yep.
partnered up. Um, and so the real question when NCBA comes out and says, we need a company like U.S. Cattle Trace to control all the information on these EID tags, people need to realize, well, the chairman of the board for Cattle Trace is also the chairman of the board for the part who is a partner and at one time was majority owner of National Packing
Yep.
Beef Corporation, which is
Yep.
now majority owned by Brazil, Marfrig. So, and I don't know Todd Wilkinson's association with any of that, but it's like, he's an attorney and
Well, I know, but he last week when he come out and he's talking about it. I mean, if I was a non-confident cattleman and didn't know who I really was, I would have felt like I was the dumbest guy on earth after he said what he said. And I'm like, this is just not. It's almost like the Democrats and the Republicans, talking down to each other. It's terrible. And
but it goes back to what we've talked about this whole thing. The more information you have, like that, how many people know that Cattle Trace is also run by the same people that are running U.S. Premium Beef, and how many people know that when they were able to get a Senate testimony, the person they wanted in there was that same guy. He testified in the Senate as a Kansas cattle rancher, but he's the chairman of the board for U.S. Premium Beef, a
sure
major
did.
partner with National Packing, and
My dad,
and
my dad would
and
call it interesting conflict. Just
complete and total conflict of interest.
total.
Like I said,
And
I don't know these guys, and I don't like talking bad about people that I don't know. And I'm not talking bad about them. I'm just
well,
telling people who they are
I mean, I'm just telling you that
and why these things are happening. Why does the beef packers' number one lobbyist organization, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, want a beef packer partner to control all of the information on EID tags? He's the chairman of the board, so I mean, I'm not saying he's controlling it, but he's the chairman of the board for this Cattle Trace Corporation, or and they're a nonprofit. Like, what's the point of that whole Cattle Trace? Like, why do these guys who are real big industry, um, um, big wigs in the cattle industry, why do they all want to be part of this Cattle Trace nonprofit that's going to control all of the information on EID tags? And then they lobby for EID tags.
mm,
Yeah, it brings a lot of questions up, and then they'll call us conspiracy theories and all that
I'll
stuff.
I'll
But here's
just
the other thing that stuff doesn't work anymore because you can just go and look it all up. Look up who the chairman of the board for Cattle Trace is. Look up who the chairman of the board of U.S. Premium Beef and who U.S. Premium Beef is and their history. I mean, it's a company. They're very smart
traceability
guys. They're very smart
traceability
guys.
committee heads, traceability committee heads,
Right.
committee members, where do they sit on these boards? How are they a stakeholder in this whole scheme? And it's all interwoven, and you can find all their names. And cattle
And I've
trace.
been told how many times U.S. Premium Beef is in Kansas and all the a lot of large Kansas feedlots, which are control Kansas Livestock Association, and everybody tells me the number one influence over NCBA is KLA, Kansas Livestock Association. So, and
You know
call
what
me a
the
conspiracy theorist, but look it all up. I mean,
you know
go to
what
Google.
you know what the irony of it all is I forgot what I was going to say.
All right. What else you got?
I don't have a
The
whole
squirrel.
lot.
You want to talk about the squirrel?
It's up to you. I mean, that was such a big thing in the
Yeah, at the
moment,
time. So
in
for
the
people
moment,
know,
and then
Shad,
now it's like nothing.
right. We were planning on doing this, and Shad texted me a few days ago. we got to talk about this squirrel deal. I'm like, Shad, we're gonna have the biggest night in American news history, and we're gonna do this the day after. I don't know if the squirrel's still gonna be. It's a wild story, but the other thing is one thing about the squirrel. I feel like those people that were keeping that squirrel, they definitely should have been able to keep the squirrel and do whatever they want with these pets that aren't bothering anyone. But they seem a little goofy.
I think that
I
there's
think they
more.
have a pet that they have like an animal sanctuary, and if you know any
They
of those
do,
people that
but I'm hearing I've got to do a deeper dive on it. I think there is more to that story than what we got. Then I'm and listen,
I'm sure there probably is.
on the face of it, it's bad. The feds have no right to go in and do what they did, as far as I'm concerned. But I think they were looking for something else.
Yeah, but if you found a squirrel, why would you take it if you were looking for something else? Yeah,
Well, some lady in Texas turned them in about the squirrel, and it's illegal to house or to have in your possession in New York wild animals. I mean, how ridiculous it is! I'd be in jail all the time, right?
yeah,
But
but well, in Texas, so this was on Rogan's show. I think they talked about. I think him and Elon Musk talked about it. You can have crazy animals. He said you can have zebras or something in
oh yeah,
Texas.
I mean, you can. And how many baby antelope did I raise growing up?
Yeah.
You know, they'd have me that and deer. You know, they'd have us all in jail. But now somebody told me that there was a little more to that story than anybody's getting. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I felt like when
Danger,
you saw those people. It's like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
cool and it's really cute and everything, and you should definitely be able to keep a squirrel if you want. But the people, let's not make them out to be the biggest heroes ever because they might not.
Exactly.
They might not
Yeah,
be.
and it certainly doesn't trump the Trump campaign last night.
Yeah.
Uh, it was an awesome night. I'm proud to be able to live in the time, and I think, I'll just if you're ready to get off, I'll just end with this. I think, in my opinion, what we saw was divine and supernatural in nature because, man, we all wanted Trump so bad for that second term, and he did not get it. And
Yeah.
apparently, the timing was not correct. And Trump has tried to be, people have tried to kill him at least twice, maybe more. Who gets through something like that? Who has that kind of protection over their life? And so I just think that maybe the timing was right for now. And
Well, that's my other worry is like, you think they tried wanted him dead before? They need to stick him in a Kevlar box for the next couple months, I would think.
I would agree
But I
with
mean,
that.
if you kill him, it's JD Vance's job, right? So how
I
many
would
of them you
agree
got
with
to
that.
kill before?
Yeah, I don't know. But I am anxious to see how RFK Jr. Works with them. I'm just excited about a lot of things. I did hear from Lara Logan last night. She was at Mar-a-Lago, and Ann Vandersteel. We texted a couple times, and they were just freaking ecstatic and excited, and it was pretty awesome. I mean, it was like a whole new lease on life because those people are not. They're like what we talked about earlier. They're former Democrats. I mean,
Yeah.
Lara Logan, she's from South America or South Africa, and she has just come to love freedom and liberty like all of us regular Americans. And it's just, gosh, it's just a different field today, buddy.
Yep. All right. Like, subscribe, follow. Go to lonesomelands.com, click subscribe. If you want these things to keep coming, which I feel like talking about how this all comes about and how we keep this thing moving forward the right way is giving people like Shad a voice. I won't throw myself in there, but I am trying to do I think what needs to be done as far as
You're
giving
doing
people
good.
voices, and that's what kind of Lonesome Lands is about. So go
How
to,
many followers do you have, buddy?
well, it's YouTube subscribers is weird because it goes
Okay.
up and down all over the place, and I don't understand how people are. I mean, I've had over 30,000, but now I've got like 29,950 or something like that. Um, on YouTube. So,
Okay.
um, but I'm gonna start. If you want to advertise, I don't. I've kept saying this. I'm gonna put together a sponsorship package, but I get so bogged down with putting content together and then other stuff because I want to keep my boots on the ground, and that's one of my main goals. I think with Lonesome Lands is to keep working on the farm and keep doing it and keep connected. And it's tough when it's tough to try to make money and then go do every
It
other thing that
really
I'm
is.
trying to do. And so I end up just getting stuck making videos and not spending any time trying to really sell the thing. So if
You
you would
need
like to help with
to get
that, go
that.
to lonesomelands.com, click on subscribe. I've got merch too. We got Christmas coming. Buy yourself a ball cap, um, made in Ainsworth, Nebraska. We talked about that. Um, and then, but yeah, share the videos. More eyeballs, the easier it will be for me to get sponsors and advertisers involved because that's kind of the goal here for the next couple weeks. Um, watch it YouTube, Apple, Spotify. That's it. Shad, you get the last word. Watch Shad on RCAF. I know one thing I feel like I should talk about RCAF podcast is another one Shad's on. So, and then I can't wait to go watch Crockett Carruthers. I don't.
Yeah.
I try not to watch too much of other people's stuff, but I'll watch you guys.
Well, and honestly, I do not watch myself on any podcasts.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I I
I have
just
to
don't.
edit these, and I hate it because I have to go back and watch myself.
Yeah. But that Crockett Carruthers one, asked him, I said, "Are you happy with it?" And he's like, "Oh man, let's do it again sometime." I'm like, "Anytime." So I hope that brought a different vision to him. Than I mean, he does a lot of different content, which is great.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I've
so we'll
that's the other
see.
thing about these kind of things. Like my go back and watch that podcast. My last podcast was with Keely Brazil Cavello,
Which
if
was
I'm saying that
super
right.
good.
Yeah, and we talked about it on there. It's like we're not, it's be easy for us to look at each other as competitors or whatever, but I feel like the main goal of these is giving voice to agriculture. So if you see, some like Amanda Radke, and what she did for South Dakota, like her voice needs to be lifted up and promoted. And I was on Trent Loos. I was on with him last week, and I think there's a
Really?
lot of these independent people that I want to promote too. So that's part of what I'm
I
doing.
can't get on. Trent Loose won't have me on. We're not good enough
Well,
friends.
didn't you and him have a little kerfuffle one time?
No, I don't remember
Oh.
it if we did. Um, but here's the deal. You said it right a while ago. It's boots on the ground. That's what's different about the people of agriculture, you and Keeley. I mean, you have boots on the ground, and that's super, super cool because you come from the same place. Basically, you come from the same place,
Yeah.
and you're
Such
trying to get
different
out.
places, completely
Yeah,
different places, but the same place. Yeah,
exactly.
that's how it works.
It's
And when
cool.
you talk about, yeah, like the farm journal, those people sit in offices all day and then they make phone calls and they talk to who they want to. And if, getting stuck in the tractor and the semis during harvest and you listen to this agri talk with Chip Flory, but he's calling the Merck rep and he's not talking to, I mean, he does talk to farmers and stuff, but it's farmers that he knows is gonna, and that's the other thing is with him and those kind of people, I think they do want what's best for agriculture, but they're controlled by a giant corporation that
That's the
just
whole
got $40
thing.
million from the federal government.
Exactly. They want
So
what's
I don't want
best
to
for
run
their
him down
pocketbook.
like because I do think he wants what's best for agriculture, but he doesn't have the freedom to say like what we can. And that's why these kind of things are important.
Amen.
Because we can say
That
whatever the hell we want.